Cindy DeCecco, and I'm here to talk to you about MIG welding for the artist. MIG means metal inert gas, also known as GMAW, which is gas metal arc welding, and it's also called short arc welding, which is probably a better description. Short arc describes how the wire that becomes the filler metal moves through the machine, and that metal, as it moves through, it makes contact with your sculpture and then shorts out and pinches back. But before it does that, it deposits a perfect weld bead if adjusted properly. And then the machine's continuing to run, depositing more and more metal and pinching back. And so that's how that process works to lay down the metal. It can give you structural welds with great penetration and also wonderful surface textures that artists can use on their sculptures. Before you begin arc welding, you need to wear the proper attire. So you want gloves that have a gauntlet-style cuff that goes over the wrist, and also vice grips to pick up your hot metal. You need a jacket with long sleeves, no pockets. Long pants, no cuffs. Boots that go over the ankle. You also need safety glasses, and they have side shields and double shieldings required, so that way your eyes are protected as well as your face when you're welding. A helmet that's a number 10 shade minimum. And now you're ready to weld. This is a welding booth. Great table for working on support, and it also helps you ground a surface. So this is the ground clamp for the MIG welder, the machine, and the shielding gas that is 75% argon, 25% CO2, and it creates a plume over that weld bead that is like being in outer space. There's no oxygen, so nothing to corrode your weld. The regulator at the top of the cylinder adjusts the shielding gas, so you can control how much shielding gas is coming in to your weld. The first dial tells you what's the quantity in the tank. The second dial tells you how much is being fed through to your torch. To set your regulators, you want to first check to make sure that this T-valve is loose, not engaged. Both dials are at 0. Open the cylinder valve at the top of the tank all the way. So lefty-loosey. Notice that that first dial on your right came up to pressure. That tells you how much shielding gas is in the tank. The second dial is the line pressure, and it's going to tell you how much shielding gas is flowing through to your torch to protect your weld. You need a minimum of 15 square cubic feet per hour. So that's SCFH. This dial has 2 settings. The square cubic feet per hour is in the red. There's also liters per hour. So make sure you use the correct dial or chart. So now the pressure is set and we're ready to weld. To set the weld parameters, if you look inside the bonnet on the machine, it'll give you a chart and you can check your settings from there. The settings on this machine for using 16 gauge at the speed that I weld, I've got the volt set at 15 and the wire speed is set at 25. To turn the machine on, a switch here at the lower right, and it's ready to go. To start your weld, you want to be comfortable, so position really is helpful. I usually hold hand in hand. Your travel angle, you want it for a bead plate, you want it to be probably at about a 45-degree angle for your travel, and your work angle is more perpendicular. So eyes. That was a forehand push. You can also do a backhand manipulation, and that was with running the wire straight. You can also do crescents or circles that are overlapping, and that lets you put down a wider bead and a little bit more metal. So now I'll do a backhand with the crescents. You might have noticed that there's a good sizzle sound. When you're in close, you want to be about 1/4 of an inch away from the material that you're welding. If you're too far away, it's going to have more of a coughing sound. So let me do a weld that's not in a good position. So that weld may or may not be structural, but it gives you great texture. It's a little bit more ropey sitting up on the surface, and often because there's no shielding gas protecting it, it might be have a bit of porosity in it. A great texture is actually leaving the shielding gas off and welding, because it will look like lava. For textures, you might want to try creating lines or patterns in your metal. By using an off-on control of the trigger, you can build up your metal, so have it be thicker. If you leave it on all the time and not allow that weld puddle to cool, it could melt through. But if you pull the trigger on and off, you can build up and get a really lovely sculptural bead at the surface. Bead. The off-on, allowing the bead to cool a bit. Looks like a marble sitting on top of the surface. If you want to create whiskers or cactus spines, you can extend out a little bit of wire, bend it back, and then attach that to your metal. And you've got a wonderful little spine there. That's something they won't teach you in a technical welding class. By moving too fast and just letting a little bit of metal stick over the surface, you can get a really random texture. One of the ways that you want to use the tool is also to create structural welds. So when you're putting two pieces of metal together, let me get out some fresh material here, and I'm welding on an aluminum plate. The steel that's wire, the filler wire, will not stick to this aluminum plate. So if I'm putting two pieces of metal together, and I'm noticing I've got a little bit of too much of a stick out, you want to keep that to 1/4 of an inch, the wire. And when you're welding, you don't want to touch the brass nozzle to your metal, because that will erode onto your metal. Inside the nozzle is the contact tip, and that's what's helping carry that electric arc to your weld. So I'm going to do a T-joint, so I'm going to tack the metal in place. And now I'm going to use a crescent shape from the upright piece to the base piece of metal and knit those together. So I've laid down a very strong weld, put down a lot of metal. I could take the hammer to that and it's not going to break. So if you need something structural or surface textures, this is a fabulous tool for an artist. To turn off the machine, you need to close the cylinder, and then to zero the dials, I'm going to pull the trigger on the torch, not making any ground contact with the work table or sculpture, and the dials will go to 0. Now that they're at 0, I can back out the T-valve and shut off the machine. Following these guidelines, you can have a great time and experience making sculpture. Remember, have fun.